a copy. For myself, I had, early on I had heard different things, but it wasn't until Richard came along and provided some of the scientific parts that I felt much more comfortable, kind of not being on the fence and being able to at least know clearly where I stood. So I think the film speaks for itself. Most, as we saw, 3/4 of the people that weren't sure when they came in exactly what happened, then had a different opinion. So the science part, I think, as Richard's saying, is really the key part, that science is not an opinion. It's in its right form. And so when we toss around all the other kinds of ideas, those are kind of opinions. So, but it's tough. It's funny, when the early years of the last decade, I was, it's kind of disillusioning. So I went back to one of my favorite hobbies, where a place that was that I found a lot of virtue, which was Penn State football. So unfortunately, these things are really hard to come out. And so just because they're hard to believe, it has nothing to do with whether they're true. And so we keep finding that out, unfortunately. But it's also, it seems to be that sometimes the more pride and the more esteem we have in people or institutions, the more vulnerable we are to that blind side, to those other parts that we just can't imagine. It almost gives a little bit of license and too much freedom, too much temptation.
So let me ask you, since the science is irrefutable, you say, and I say, then someone might ask, and I would too, it's a question, well, then what? And I'm asking you personally, not as a member of the architects and engineers who's being careful and properly careful in circumscribing his comments. But you're not an architect, or, you're not a scientist. You're speaking as a psychologist and as a citizen. So what do you say to people? You say, listen, the science is irrefutable. And then they say, well, where do we go? What should I think? What should I feel? What do you say to that?
Yeah.
Can I just add something to that?
No.
Yeah. Again, this is real tough stuff. It depends on the person. I mean, honestly, sometimes I really don't tell certain people because they got enough on their plate, and I don't push it on certain people because they got a lot of things going on. The people that are interested usually have a lot of questions, of, hey, what about this, and what would have happened to these people, and why didn't somebody come forward? And then one of the things that I come back to, which is often just what I find in working the field that I do, is that when people do things, when there's something that's not right, the person who's victimized doesn't really have to come up with all the answers and sort out, if the husband cheated, how did he, they don't have to figure out every detail. It's the victim does not have to kind of go through that. But it's very tough. I think we're just starting. There are no courses in this. It's certainly, it's not, for some reason, they don't give government grants, I suppose, to researching these sorts of things, or how psychology would deal with it. But I just try to be real gentle, because it's a tough thing, and acknowledge my own struggle with it, and but kind of with the facts and the video, I just sometimes let people sit with it, but it's very challenging. It depends on the person and the relationship. Okay,
I just want to ask you, since you're never going to get media support for this arrangement, is there any legal way to get a new investigation, like in Europe? If you collect, I don't know, it depends on the country, 100,000 signatures, give it to the parliament, then they have to do it. Is there a legal way like that here, or no? Or it's all going to be blah, blah forever?
There are several legal ways. The people of New York City initiated one such way, and that was the ballot initiative, which had 80,000 of your signatures on it, calling for a real investigation of 9/11. The city found fit to find it technically in a problem with it, a small technical problem. And so they violated the will of the people. And that has been a huge problem, because many of the suits, the lawsuits, themselves are directed and funneled through Judge Hellerstein, who has a series of gross violations of justice relative to 9/11 issues. So we have an uphill battle. There are
Can't you go
ballot
federal or something?
there are ballot initiatives that are state run, but they require a lot of money, a lot of effort, and we're not that well organized, frankly. I mean, we should have people down the block trying to see this film.
Yeah, but I heard that about this in Europe, but they just don't want it.
You what?
I heard about this movement in Europe.
But?
But here they don't want it.
They don't want it here.
Because they believe in all this, that they are
Yeah, it's an uphill battle. So that completes our questions. We have to be at the event at 5:45 to get ready. And so if you have more questions, join us up at St. Paul's, St. Andrew's Church on 86th Street. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. According to what you said, it was pre-9/11.
A lot of this is